Hi, it's Kathy Baldwin, and welcome to Unlearn the Crap and Level Up. In today's episode, I sat down with Corey Myka. I thought we'd be talking about confidence and self-worth, and we did. But what made this conversation unforgettable was just how she brought it to life through her work teaching adults how to swim. Think about that for a moment. For so many people, stepping into the water isn't just about swimming. It's about facing fear, the fear of sinking, the fear of losing control, the fear of being vulnerable. And Corey shows how those fears in the pool are the exact same fears that show up in everyday life. Corey shared how she had to unlearn the belief that it's wrong to shine, to toot your own horn, or to claim the space you deserve. That conditioning made her play small in every part of her life. But the very process that she uses to teach her students, learning to trust the water, trust themselves, and move through fear, is the same process she lived to finally step into her own power. And what I love most about this episode is how clear it becomes that everything connects. The body, the mind, the energy, the stories we've been told. And when you face fear in one area, even in the water, it ripples out into every other part of your life. Welcome to my conversation with Corey.
Welcome to Unlearn the Crap TV with your host, Kathy Baldwin. Unlearn the Crap TV is more than just a show. It's a movement towards breaking free from the disempowering structures designed to benefit the few at the expense of the many. It's about education, healing, and unlearning the detrimental beliefs that have been ingrained in society for generations. So now, please welcome the host of Unlearn the Crap TV, Kathy Baldwin.
Welcome to Unlearn the Crap and Level Up. Your soul is calling. On today's show, we are going to address the crap that we've been taught, the conditioned responses and automatic programming that goes into the way our lives roll out, the things that create the disempowerment, the struggles. And we're also going to talk about how that crap becomes a physical component into our life because we are biochemical, electromagnetic, interconnected, interrelated beings. And everything affects everything, both internally and externally, both physically as well as emotionally and energetically. We are going to address the crap that gets in the way of you living your very best life. My name is Kathy Baldwin. I am your host and your guide. And today's guest is Corey Myka. And we are going to hit some pretty cool topics today. Welcome, Corey. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Corey, you heard what crap is about. You know the premise of what we discuss here. What crap did you need to unlearn so that you could level up?
What I needed to unlearn is that it is okay and actually super useful to toot my own horn.
Ooh, toot toot.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I was always taught really to play small. I was taught don't think too highly of yourself, like go out and succeed and you should do good things in the world and good grades and all this, but don't be too conceited about it or self-aggrandizing about it. sort of don't toot your own horn. And, this just made me play small, both in my professional life, in my personal life, my parenting life. Like, it doesn't give me this foundation to stand strong on. Like this idea that being conceited or tooting your own horn is about putting somebody else down, which is so not true. It's really about having a strong foundation for yourself to show up as yourself, to make your contribution into the world. So yeah, it really came to me when I worked with another person, and I would give all the credit to that other person. Like, I'm really amazing at the work that I do because somebody else like trained me or taught me or developed it or something like that. I had no sort of self-possession of the idea, like, okay, yeah, you go out and you learn something, but I still delivered it to the world, right? Like, my contribution was significant. There's lots of people who learn lots of things, but they don't go back and contribute it. Like, my own unique way of contributing it back to the world. I had no concept of how useful and how important it was for me internally to be able to stand up and say, no, it's okay to toot my own horn. This is a really good thing. It will help up level me.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay, perfect segue. Corey, could you please tell everybody, now that you've unlearned that crap, how you level up and how you serve this world?
Well, one of the big ways, I mean, there's more multifaceted, but in my work, how I really serve the world is I teach adults to have confidence in deep water. And so teach people how to swim. And really, that's the key thing, is this: people have a desire to do something like learn to swim, but we always talk about, like, well, but how do you want to feel when you're doing it, right? I want to feel safe and confident. It comes to this internal way of being. It isn't just like doing the thing. It's also how I want to feel about myself while I'm doing the thing. And so this is this real key piece of, for me to show up as a teacher, okay, do I want to be this teacher who's kind of nervous and like giving credit to other people and turning it away? Or do I want to be able to show up with the calm confidence to be able to deliver that to my students so they can have that in their own lives? So it's this multi-layered way of being that was really my up-leveling as a teacher, as a business owner, to be able to up-level my business and to reach and impact more people.
Yeah. And that is exactly why I knew you were going to be a perfect guest on this show. Thank you for coming. I want to come to one of the things that you started with which I think is so, so important that we all talk about: tooting your own horn. That is absolutely part of the crap that we were taught. Don't self-grandiose. Don't own your own genius. It is conceited. You are as if us owning who we are and where we have our own gifts diminishes anybody else around us. I believe that whole concept is about keeping us small, about keeping us disempowered, because if you don't own how you have your own zone of genius, how can you ever become empowered?
Right, for sure. And I'm doing a practice right now of my own mental fitness. I mean, this is something as a coach, right? I do serve all the time, but I realize, I do a lot of work with the thoughts that we have in our head, right? These ongoing thoughts that usually are not positively tooting your horn. And they show up in this way of like, no, I'm just here to keep you safe. Or if you're not like critically thinking about something, right, you're just like analyzing the world or yourself or whatever, right? It's guised in this way as being helpful, but it just, like you said, it makes you feel small and does not help you grow and contribute to yourself or the world. And so just doing these small practices of when let's just say I meditate for 10 seconds, like I just start a 10-second meditation, to actually then stop and celebrate, toot my own horn to myself, right? And feeling the dopamine hit in my brain, like, oh, that like actually feels good, instead of the other side of just letting that, well, you should do it for this long and you should do it like that, right? That analyzing, that quote unquote analyzing part.
Should.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, should.
So great to toot your own teeny tiny horn for yourself, even.
Well, I'm not sure it should be teeny tiny, because it is a fact. And if we look at our zone of genius as a fact, not narcissistic, if we just look at it, it's a fact, I'm wearing a red shirt. If I had the belief that wearing red was wrong, or it was too showy, or I had any other really weird beliefs about the color of my shirt, I would be feeling uncomfortable wearing a red shirt. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Even though it's just a fact, it's just a circumstance in the world. Red shirt.
Yeah. And so one of my zone of genius is I am curious. And because I'm curious, I want to learn everything. I want to learn everything about the people I'm talking to, about every subject that we're involved in, which is why this show is so diverse. And so me owning my curiosity and my intelligence, for so long, I was afraid to let people know how smart I was, because it came across that other people who didn't feel as intelligent or as capable in their own intelligence, that they would feel insecure in themselves. And I was more concerned about other people's feelings and their experiences, rather than just owning, yes, I'm smart, I'm intelligent, I'm educated.
For sure. Well, and I just love that piece that you say you were more concerned with other people's experiences, as if your the circumstance of you affects somebody else's experience, right? Because our own experiences is, as you described it with the red shirt, it has to do with how we make our own meaning in the world. And that's for other people to be able to understand for themselves and empower and choose for themselves. Yeah, of the meaning that they make out of things. Yeah. But I always find it very interesting in our classes that people have this, what I would say, a very narrow view and focus of what buoyancy looks like in the water, how they're supposed to float in the water, that everybody's supposed to be horizontal to the surface of the water. And you get into this class of 4 or 5 people, different bodies, they all kind of do it differently. And it's very normal, because it's just a factual thing. It's like gravity, buoyancy, gravity. It's just a neutral circumstance of how it is in the properties of water. And yeah, you do find people wishing then suddenly to be, well, I was going to say to be like somebody else's body. There's a lot of that in the world, but you have men looking at women suddenly wishing they were more like women, which is not something you see very often, because women, they float more than men do as a general rule of thumb. And so it's just sort of interesting how people then leaning into the curiosity. Wait a second, do I really want to have the body of a 60-year-old woman? Wait, no, I'm a 29-year-old male. Like, no, I don't. So then it opens their brains like, okay, I need to get, like you say, curious here. What is going on here? And oh, this is just how it works. So it's a nice opening to let the water just be very neutral for people to be curious about. And so much joy comes out of that.
Oh, what a beautiful metaphor. First of all, you were talking about how we can have judgment on ourselves by going into comparison, even in an environment where it is a very personal experience. You're learning to swim. Your ability to swim has nothing to do with the people around you.
Right.
Your ability to swim and be in the water is only your experience. And yet you're finding people were still having judgment and comparison.
Oh, so much so. We're so trained for it that there's a right or a wrong or a good or a bad versus no, it just is that your body in the water mixed like this and it's great. And that's all we need to know about. And that's all we need to discover. But yeah, we're so binary in our thinking of that there's a right way and a wrong way of how things happen instead of everybody has a way and it's all good. It's about just understanding what that is. And there's enough, yeah, when you look at a pool of people, literally putting people in a pool, they're all slightly different. There's a slight nuance to everybody's body. And yeah, we have this myth that we're all supposed to be the same, which is, very untrue. And so it is a wonderful, magical place to be able to discover that.
This is why I was so excited to have you on the show, because the life experiences of this example, it showcases so many different areas in our lives. There's a couple of things that you talked about that I want to circle around to. One, let's go to the physical. Men have a different center of gravity than women, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, they do. Yep, their bodies are, yeah. Women's bodies have more fat tissue on it, and our bones in general are less dense and than males. Males generally have more muscle, more body density. Therefore, buoyancy is different between men and women. And it's also different between women and women and men, right? Because different ages, different body types, yeah, all normal.
So that sounds like a perfect example of just self-acceptance.
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure. Yeah, I love telling people it's about understanding how the water and your body, your perfect body as it is right now, work together. People see, swimming is this thing that people do as tiny babies and very old people, right? It's a full lifetime opportunity. And so it's not one of these things like you need to be in shape to do it. It's a way, if you want to use it for fitness, to get into shape if you wanted to. But it accepts you and takes you exactly as you are. It doesn't ask you to be any different. It's just about becoming curious of how that interaction is.
Oh, I love that. I'm a swimmer, or I used to be. I need to get back into it. Life has thrown a few curveballs at me, but I know when I'm in the water, whether it's a pool or a lake or an ocean, there is an energetic component to the water. And that energy, is it, for me, it's like the grounding effect that we get from Mother Nature, because we are electromagnetic beings. Do you talk about or experience that with your students on that connection between the Mother Nature, the flow of energy of the water moving, of the I used to love skinny dipping. because I loved the feeling of the water moving through my body, around my body as I
Mhm.
went through it, and not having any barriers. It was just me and the water. Do your students
Yeah.
experience that?
Well, their
Not the skinny
bodies
dip.
do. What's that?
I not the skinny dipping part.
Oh, okay. That did go through my head. I'm like, they have all these other fears. That's not probably their go-to. But well, let me say this. So half of adults can't swim, uh, generally speaking,
Really?
about half. Yeah, Gallup poll surveys have shown it's like 64% are afraid in deep water oceans and lakes, and 46 are afraid in pools. So generally, about half of adults don't swim.
Really? I had no idea.
Yeah, and so now not all of them come to us to learn to swim for various reasons, but part of it, the people who do come to us are the people who say things like, I love the water as long as it doesn't go past 5 feet, right? So there's this stopping point. But I think those folks who say that, I love the water, but they do feel that. That's that innate attractiveness. And we're made up of water. We need water. Water's pretty high on the scale of need, air being really at the top, but water is right up there, right? We need water sooner than we need food, even. So I think that when you talk about that magnetic pull, I think there's a very biological piece to that. But when we're in this, back to this, like not being able to toot my own horn, not being in a flow of curiosity, when I'm in this other side of judgment and shoulding and fear, when people show up to the water in those spaces, they are less likely to connect with these actual experiences that are happening to their body. So they're on a physiological level, their body is experiencing the goodness of the water if they're in it, but they're not necessarily getting the psychological benefit of it because they're so in this hyper mode that is preventing that access to it. And so that's what we really help people with is, okay, we got to get out of this saboteur kind of mode and come down into ourselves so you can experience that goodness. You can experience both the physiological and the psychological benefits of being with yourself in the water.
I did not know that our conversation was going to go into this place, but I'm so grateful it has, because when we are, one of the things I always talk about is the stress response of our central nervous system. And when we go into a place of fear with fear, flight, fight, whatever, and we're in our sympathetic, we are disconnected from certain aspects of our body, of what is available to us. We can't think clearly. And what I'm hearing from you is that when somebody is not able to be at peace in the water, that their central nervous system has kicked in. So not only are they not getting the benefits of the water, but now they're not getting the cognitive access to make sound decisions. So this is a life and death situation for so many people. Am I correct?
You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. That the biggest danger in the water is panic. Is the biggest danger is losing yourself, right? And this is where I actually think the water is. It's not just a metaphor, but it is a huge tool that we can use to actually practice this in real time. Right, where you go to your boss to have a conversation and your system is all fried up, right? But you're not actually you're in a psychological life or death situation, but you're not in a generally speaking, when you talk to your boss, you're not in a physiological life or death situation. But in the water, right, you have both of those things. So it's a vitally important that you do have to practice that if you want to be successful there. And it's a real opportunity because like you described then, oh, the wonder and the personal fulfillment that you can get in there. You don't have to have the boss say yes or no to that raise or whatever. You just get it by simply having your presence there and slowing down and taking care of yourself in that way.
So are you seeing that there are more benefits to somebody overcoming their fear of water and learning to swim than just in the water?
There's more benefits to overcoming your fear. Sorry, would you ask that again?
Would you say that the benefits of overcoming any fear of water, of learning to swim, that those life lessons, that change in our thought process, the unlearning of the crap, carries over into other areas of our life?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. That is what I'm saying. Yeah, for sure. You bring in the skills that you have of unlearning the crap in other areas of your life to the pool. Either the good ones or the bad ones. If you have not learned to undo the crap in your life, you're going to bring that into your pool experience. But you also have ways that you have learned to do it, right? And you get to bring those into the pool. Then you get to practice it in the pool, develop it in the pool, and yes, take that out into your life of seeing, gosh, I literally was afraid for my life, right? Or literally couldn't go love myself in the water or really connect or feel safe in the situation. And I've learned how to do it. How to have it come from me, not from an external source. And that does give us that confidence to be able to do it in other places. I do get stories all the time like, quit that job, ended that relationship, went on that vacation and had fun. Yeah, we do. Yeah, have those stories.
Thank you for sharing that, because that ties to how I opened this episode, where everything is interconnected. And if we're having an area of our life that is disempowering us, if we have this belief or this thought, I can't swim or I'm in danger, that these thoughts carry over into our identity of who we are, and it carries over into other aspects of our lives. So if people say, you know what, I can go my whole life without ever overcoming this, but they don't understand that the very fact that they're carrying this disempowerment is actually affecting every area of their life.
For sure. Yes, it definitely does. Because it takes energy. It takes energy to avoid these things or to hold them at bay. Or yeah, it takes work and takes energy to be able to do that. And again, that narrative voice, right? It just strengthens that narrative voice, which you will then we can apply to every, any other area of our life.
Absolutely. There's two stories that I wanted to talk about that are not necessarily about personal empowerment, but they're water related. So I thought you're a perfect person to bring these stories to the show with.
Great.
One of them is it was a snippet of a commercial of a TV show that I saw. And we get life lessons from so many different places. But this little commercial, it was a dystopian show. And they were standing on a cliff, and there were these people there. And this wise older person said to this new indoctrinate or this new initiated, it'll all depend on how you handle this. And the woman pushed the person over the cliff and into the river. And at first, the person in the river started to panic and flay And all of these, it was very dangerous and chaotic. And you could see the moment where in their mind it was, how am I going to handle this? And they stopped fighting the current.
Mm.
And they just went. And now it became peaceful. And now everything became aligned. And so every time I find myself or working with people, and you find that chaos and that struggle and that fight for survival, and if we just stop and allow and receive.
Mm-hmm.
Is that some of the beauty that you see when you help people transform, is that they are now able to go with the flow better in their lives?
For sure. For sure. I mean, that is such a, it's a good image that you painted there. And it, I mean, from a very factual standpoint around being in the water, like people talk about rip currents. The biggest problem with the rip current, a current, is where it takes you out in the ocean. And it's the idea that people then are trying to fight that current and come back. It's not like the water works differently 100 feet from the shore than it does, 10 feet from the shore. The water actually works the same. You can work the same. You can still swim if you're 100 feet away from the shore versus 10 feet away from the shore, but it's the mentality that goes with it. And when we stop fighting it, we find out, oh, there's easier ways to come back into the shore. You don't want to try and fight upstream. It's not going to work. That's a circumstance. It just doesn't work. And I'll say too, in case people's thoughts are like, yeah, but you need to be alert to certain things. And it is true. I mean, if somebody pushed you off of a cliff into water, having that system of alert turn on is actually useful. And it is a normal thing that our bodies do. But then the problem is we stay in that mode, as you say, for too long. And so having that practice to, what is it that I need to come in, focus? And, we tell people in swimming, you want to take stock of your air. Your job is to feel the air that you have. And that is to come in and feel right now and have that peace that gets us out of our head, back down into our bodies. And then we can act from a slower, more appropriate way to, in the case of swimming, get air again, refresh that air. That's what people need to do. But yeah, that practice of coming in and feeling, having a stop, even if it's a micro stop, right? It doesn't have to be stop forever. It's not like stop and roll over and let everybody, interfere with your boundaries or something like that. But it's just enough to get that system to slow down a little bit, so you are then effective in what your response is and when that next thing is.
Yeah. Well, that stop and focusing in on your breath and your oxygen is actually turning the switch of your central nervous system from your sympathetic to your parasympathetic, which now gives you access to your prefrontal cortex and your thinking intellectual brain. Mm-hmm. And so that is such a beautiful example of just focus in on your breath. Now you're telling your brain you're safe.
Right. At the most important level, going back to that, yeah, we need water, we need food, but you need air. That hierarchy, yeah. I have some safety.
Perfect. You brought up my second point, and so I want to make sure that we talk about that, because we are talking about swimming, and this is one of the major dangers that people deal with when you're dealing with open water, the rip current. I'm in Canada, so I used to be very close to one of the Great Lakes. And there was a place on a beach that I would go to on a very regular basis, and you could see the rip current. and you could see the way the water moved. And I remember learning how to handle that. Would you tell people what a rip current is and what they should do if they find themselves in one? Because I believe, first of all, this is a life and death lesson for swimming, but it's also a life metaphor.
Yeah. Well, one of the first things to know, so what a rip current is. A rip current is, if you think about open water, the water is generally, it's getting pushed into the shore. Right? This is why we like to go to a beach and collect things, because things are getting pushed into the shore. The water is getting pushed into the shore. But then the water also has to return back out. So the rip current is where the water is going back out. And the way you can identify and find the current and why it's, you might call it an attractive nuisance, is because it's oftentimes calmer where the rip is, because the water is flowing out like a river. It's flowing out versus crashy waves coming in. So this is why people end up in that zone, because it's attractive. Like, oh, the water's a little bit calmer here. We're going to stick our toes in the water here where it's not crashing in on us. But that might be the place where the water is actually going back out. So if you're in a rip current, if you do swim in it or go in it, it's a river flowing out. So it's going to be taking you away from the shore. You don't want to then think, I just am going to turn around and swim back into the shore, because it is, I don't care how good of a swimmer you are. I'm an excellent swimmer. You can't outswim a current. I mean, a very, very slow current, maybe, but not, most currents, you can't outswim it. It's like your earlier example of being pushed in a river. You have to go with it. You have to allow for it. So the way then, as I described, it's flowing the water out, but most of the water actually flows back in. You can kind of think of it like a mushroom. I mean, it kind of looks like a mushroom where it goes up the stem and then flows over on the sides. So we actually swim parallel to the shore to be able to come out of it and to come slowly back into the shore, kind of as a diagonal. But you allow yourself to, or spit out the top of the rip, so that you can, I'm trying to describe it. If I keep waving my hand around, but if people look you can't see my hand waving around. How do I describe this? But yeah, so that you go over the side of it and you come out. It's not like it takes you from the west shore. I mean, we were talking about the Great Lakes, from the west side of the lake to the east side of the lake. It doesn't go that far. It mushrooms over. There's a stop to it. And so when we're in that place, that's when you can make your way more parallel, diagonally back into shore.
So the visual that you were describing of the mushroom, what I was seeing is the closer it is to shore, it is the strongest it is, because that's the point of it turning around. And just like anything, when it gets into a larger mass, it dissipates, right? So that's what's happening, is the farther away from shore, the strength gets dissipated, and that becomes the place where we no longer have to fight the current.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it in those terms, but I think you're right. And it's the other piece, around the rip current, the water's getting pushed back in. So it's this cycle thing that's happening. So once you get to let's say the top of the rip current, the water is then cycling back in towards shore. That's where it sort of opens up like a flower or top of a mushroom. But yeah, so you have more access to be able to go with that flow, the flow that's pushing the water in versus the flow of the water being pulled out.
Okay, so one of the things that I talk about all the time are universal laws. And I talk about the law of rhythm. and that everything has a cycle and a wave. And so
Mm,
what I just heard you describe was going with the actual rhythm of the water. And that
mhm,
when the water has a strong force taking you out, you can't outswim it. I love those words. You can't outswim it. So you allow and you go with it until you can get to a place where now you go with the flow of it coming in. So you're using the power of the water, you're using the power of the circumstance that you're in to get you to where you want to go, instead of that you should be able to turn around exactly where you are and you should just be able to swim to shore because you are a strong swimmer, so you should be able to do this, instead of actually taking a look at your circumstances and saying, well, how do I do this in this environment?
yes, I go with the flow, quite literally. What is the easiest way? And yeah, how often we are pushing upstream versus allowing ourselves to go with the movement. It's not that you don't make adjustments, right? You use your paddles, our hands or our feet to move diagonally through or to make small adjustments, but we're not trying to overpower the whole thing. Yeah, we want to work with it. How can this place help me? How can we work together that I can get my air? I can get my air again when I'm at the going out. I can get my air when I'm coming in. There's a time and a place where my mouth can come out of the water for a few moments, take some air, go back under, let that water support me, let it hold me, and feel the flow and work with that flow.
Wow, you just took something that could be so chaotic and so terrifying, and you described it in a way that actually brought peace to me as I was listening to you.
Mm.
How do you help people transition their fear of the water into that beautiful, calm space that you just created in me
Mm.
listening to you?
Well, we don't start in a rip current. We start in a much simpler place. Um, but it's finding that peace, even when, say, somebody's sitting next to the pool, because that system of fight or flight will happen for folks when they're not even in the water yet. So it's learning how to sit next to the pool and calm my system. Then I can proceed forward bit by bit.
I can edit, don't worry.
Yeah.
Take a drink of water.
I
Do you
felt it
have a,
coming
do you
up
have
when
a,
I was saying that last thing. Okay.
do you have a drink of water near you?
I do, but I'm going to hang on because sometimes it can make it worse. Okay, there we go. So we're just going tiny bit at a time. So as we were talking about that rip current, right, it's slowing down and feeling what is. And in that case where I was kind of describing, we're going to go with that flow. When we start with students, it's coming in and seeing, I know how to breathe sitting next to the pool. I am safe sitting next to the pool, and waiting not till we're having just the cognitive experience of that, but the actual physiological experience of it. And that's really vitally different. That most people are saying, like, well, you ready to begin? Okay, yep, I'm ready, right? But their physiology isn't actually attuned to what they think they should say. Right? I paid for a swimming lesson. I paid to be here. I got into this swimsuit, right? I've done all these things. I have all these expectations, back to the shoulds. So I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
but we're really slowing folks up before we even get in the water. No. We actually want to tune in to that very quietest place of yourself, that very tender place, and see, is that place ready to get in? Is it showing up in the physiology of your body? Is it all attuned? And when it is, then we can ask the question, do I want to get in? And we can feel this oneness with ourselves, right? And so it's going each tiny step at a time that we're more concerned with this alignment than we are with doing the action step. Because we know people can swim, we know that we can figure out the steps, but it's this alignment part that is what's so foundational and missing for folks.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because it is alignment in every area of our life where we are empowered. And the example that I always use is a food processor. And until that food processor locks into place and all of the pieces are in line, we can push all the buttons and we can do all the things and nothing works. And so you just gave a beautiful recipe on how to create alignment in any circumstance, to face any challenge, to face any fear, whether it is water or any other area of our life where we are in a situation. When we come back to ourself, when we come back to our inner knowing, we align ourselves to say, yes, I am safe, I am breathing, I am in control, and it doesn't matter what's happening around me. Inside is where the power is.
For sure. Yes. That's where the power is. It's where your knowledge is. It's where your truth is. It's where you get back to that beginning here, where you get to toot your own horn. I feel good about myself for being myself and having this wisdom and oneness. Yeah. And it's good.
I love that. Can you tell me whether we all innately know how to swim, and that it's just crap that has gotten in the way of our beliefs that we can't? And the reason I'm asking this question is because you brought up the fact that babies to old people. I've seen people throw babies into a water and watch the baby flip on its back and get its air and float. Is this a natural human instinct?
Because I don't want people to be throwing babies in the water and testing this.
No.
It is, we all have an innate ability to figure out the steps. In the same way we have the innate ability to figure out the steps to walk or to read, to ride a bike. So we have these abilities within us. And it does look different for different people because, again, we do have different bodies, right? And babies they have a reflex under 4 months to hold their breath for obviously just short periods of time, but they do have a reflex to hold their breath. But when they start to lose it, if it's not used. And babies do move their bodies if they're put into water in a way that mimics swimming. What they don't do so these babies that you see that are going to water and they flip over, they have been trained to do that. So this is not something that a baby would do without that kind of training. So I want to be clear about that they are being taught how to do that. So they wouldn't automatically do that. And babies can't lift their heads out of the water. That's how, when you're like I can lift my head out of the water to take a breath because the weight of their head, right, and the strength of their neck.
Yeah, they haven't built the neck muscles yet.
Exactly.
What I was getting at with this is that it is a human ability that every single human being has, and that when we have fear of water, when we have fear of swimming, it's not because we are the exception.
Correct. Yes. That. So we all have this ability within us. And yeah, I mean, again, I think I relate it to something like reading or walking. When we're put in an environment where we are safe to discover what our bodies and brains are capable of doing, then there's so much available to us. But it is in the ways that we put limitations and fears and doubts on ourselves, right? That or we take on too much. I think that's the thing, like with that baby, you're not going to just throw the baby in there without some safeguards. Same with as an adult, as a swimmer, you're not going to just throw yourself into the middle of the Lake Michigan or something like that. You're going to give yourself steps, and you get to call yourself a swimmer along the way, just like we call children readers when they're on the way with their little board books. And that's part of the process, right? To go through
the identity.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, identity changes who we are when we can articulate, I am a swimmer, instead of I am afraid of the water.
Right. Yes.
My father had a traumatic incident when he was a child, and he was very afraid of the water, and he felt he couldn't swim. But yet he made sure that we always had a swimming pool in our backyard. And the rule that he had was I was not allowed to go into the deep end until I could swim 2 lengths crosswise, which meant in his mind, it didn't matter where I was in the pool, I would be able to swim enough to get to the edge. And as you were talking about how people overcome this, I was remembering him swimming in our pool, and he was doing lengthwise laps, but he was swimming along the edge of the pool, not in the middle, so that at any point he could reach up and he could grab. And that was how he created his safety and his security. And what I was hearing you talk about is taking people to this place where they could create their own safety internally rather than from the edge of the pool.
Yeah, well, and it starts with, it's very simple in terms of like your dad, if he were able to acknowledge that he's the one who created that safe space to use the tool of the side of the pool. The side of the pool never, ever, ever knew when he needed to take a breath. But him being enough self-possessed to say, it's time for some air. What's the easiest way to get air? I think I'm going to use this wall right here to get the air, right? He's the one who went through those steps. He's the one who did it. Therefore, the safety was residing in him. I'm going to guess that he had a narrative that said, I'm safe because of the wall, because of this outternal thing. He didn't toot his own horn to say, no, I'm safe because of what's going on in me. And I use the available tool to me. And I set myself up in a place where I created multiple ways to get air. Maybe he knew how to pop up or turn over as well, but he also had this other means to get air. It's because of him.
And his own self-awareness and being aware of what his needs are and making sure that he was addressing his own needs so that he could do the things he wanted and keep himself safe.
Right. Yeah. And when people switch that narrative and switch the, oh, I'm the lotus of the safety. That's when you start to be able to release something like the wall, right? That even if he stayed right next to the wall, he would be more self-possessed, and he would be able to probably take more ownership over the other ways. Over time, you would develop other ways to get air. And if you kept in that pathway of, that's in my locus of control of how I get air, it's not the wall, he probably would have naturally started to gravitate a little bit away from the wall because the focus was in him, not in the wall.
Oh, I love that. Corey, would you tell people what your best advice is if they're feeling a fear of the water, and who and how you can help people?
Yeah. So my best advice is to take it very slow and lovingly, right? To slow down and honor the things that you're concerned about, because those are the questions for you to discover and play with and to get curious with. We don't need to reject those. We invite those questions in to see, what is it that I need here? And how could I take care of myself in this way? If you're curious about that, curious about opening up, because sometimes we don't know all those questions, and this is where, we actually teach people how to swim online. Because it helps them to be able to open up to some of these questions and to discover and to see what the tiny steps are. So you can find us at adultswimlesson.com. That's the way if you want to know about learning to swim online or learning to swim on retreats. Then we also have all of our social media, which I do lots of videos to help people craft a new image of what learning to swim can look like. And that's Calm Within Adult Swim as our social media handle.
Thank you so much for bringing your perspective and your insight into Unlearn the Crap. One of the greatest things that I learned in my life was that we can get insights and revelations from different areas of our life that we would never have thought about. Other businesses can provide insight to our own business, other aspects. And this conversation about adults learning to swim and adults learning to swim online, which are a lot of crap beliefs that we have come to believe that is not possible. But all it is a set of beliefs that once we challenge them, we can take these lessons, apply them to our lives, and bring our locus of control where it belongs inside of us so that we can level up and live our best lives.
So true. So true. Thank you so much for this conversation. It was great.
Thank you so much, Corey. And until next time, continue to challenge everything so that you can achieve anything, because your soul is calling and the world is waiting for you. Thank you for listening to the Unlearn the Crap and Level Up podcast. If this conversation spoke to you, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and leave a review. That simple act helps amplify this important work of unlearning the crap that holds us back. This show is built on the foundation of my 3 books: Unlearn the Crap and Level Up, Your Soul is Calling, a roadmap to release what no longer serves you; How I Unlearned My Crap, which is my raw story of breaking free and the patterns that I needed to unlearn; and the 3rd book, The Unlearned Life, an AI-powered ritual system for truth transformation and personal empower. If you're a podcaster or you want to be, this is for you, because 85% of podcasts fail. not because of the message isn't powerful enough, but because the back end can be overwhelming. I created the Finally Podcast automation system so your voice doesn't become a statistic. Your message is too important to be silenced by burnout, tech chaos, or even wasted time. My mission is to support not only my guests and you, the audience, but also every podcaster who's ready to level up. So until next time, keep unlearning, keep leveling up,